guy's livelihood is based on a year to year, I would like to see something that we propose in a contract that has a longer period of time. Personally, I look at his contract he's proposing to us, and I think it's a valid proposal. I think while we do this, I think we should talk about maybe retaining him for at least another year, and then we can go down the process of, are we gonna, the next time around, do we have a 2-year, do we have a 3-year? So a person has a little bit of livelihood there, wondering if I'm gonna have my job next year. And then we can have some clauses in there, like most do, that either they're outs for if he's not performing his duties. But from what I've seen of him since I've been here, he's been amazing.
Go ahead, Nathan.
Okay. I would reiterate that, and I think part of it for me is prior to Dan's arrival, from my perspective, our administrators were biased. I did not like that. That was, in my opinion, highly inappropriate, and I haven't seen that in Dan at all, one way or the other. As you know, I've got my opinions. They're pretty strong, and Dan has never either supported or not supported anything that I've said as far as an opinion. It's always right down the line professional, and I think that is exactly what we need for an administrator. So, and I think that's hard to get. Somebody who's basically a consummate professional. They're just going to do their job, and they're not going to get involved in the day-to-day discussions and fights that occur. The other thing I wanted to address is, since Director Driscoll brought it up a couple of times, is a linkage to an office. We did have a proposal that came in at the same time that Dan's proposal came in, and we reviewed it, so this was about a year ago. And that was one of the things that was included as a possibility in one of the other proposals. We discussed that, and I think we decided that that was not wise to do, because then you got your office linked to the need to keep that admin on staff, basically. So if you fired that admin, you're out of your office too. So having the office be independent of that position, I think, is a smart thing to do.
Yeah, I'd like to third, well, I recommend that Dan be sustained. And one of the things I like about your proposal is having it more than 1 year. The only time you have to worry about is what happens when one of the admin groups quits, which is what happened to us. And we had like 2 months to make that decision. And now with everything being sped up with every month we have a meeting, I don't know that it's increased his work. It's sure produced a lot more paper, about twice as much paper. But no, Dan is always here. He always answers the phone. And because I was treasurer and had to come down, he was always reminding me when I needed to come down to do the work of reviewing and then signing the checks. So yeah, I think he's done a remarkable job for a person, one person compared to a large group. You know, maybe a large group could do a better job, but I also agree with Director Jovic that having this office separate from the actual contract is advantageous, because if they quit, now we've even shortened the amount of time we could use to find a new admin person to a month. And it would probably be executive board meetings that you'd have to do it in. So.
Anyway, I might make a comment.
James.
Oh, okay.
One of the reasons why there's not a different written contract with Dan is because we solicited the bid. We put in there what was required prior. And that had been the norm before that. So there isn't a renewal clause in case a new board comes on and decides they want to hire somebody new. It wasn't added angst for anybody else. It just seemed that in the past, everybody was given a renewal as long as all was well. And I think that's where we're at today. I think he has a new proposal for us for this year, and the only stipulation was a slight raise due to the increased meetings, which we've probably double his pre-prep almost, and he's only given us a 7% increase. I think we're getting a bargain.
I think Dan's done a great job too. I mean, I have the same experience. Anytime I want something, he gets back to me. But when I was on the committee that we were going to put this thing together, and when I worked for the city of Rapid City, it was set up, actually I thought really well, and it was the 6th district local governments. Dan Lindquist was the executive director. He also was the executive director, which is quasi-governmental group, but you know, one of the things we're not doing right now, in my opinion, is that we don't have a person out there looking at projects that we can do, grant money that's available, that sort of thing, which 6th District did for us. And there was always people with projects and not enough money to fund all the projects. And I've been on here about 2 years now, and we don't have a person that's out there really promoting projects. I mean, I brought a couple of projects there, and some of the other ones have brought some projects in and on their own, but you know, most of us on here have jobs and don't have time to go out looking for projects. But I totally agree. I'm very comfortable with Dan. I would suggest we sign up for another year, in my opinion.
I'd make a motion that we move this to the next meeting and everybody take a look at the proposal, and that we discuss it, and maybe at the next meeting, if anybody has any changes or they are.
I think we gotta do it now.
Well, that would work
That will
because
work.
he won't be getting, because his contract ends in
Oh,
March
is it
anyway.
March?
Yeah.
Then my motion is to accept this proposal. I've read it and I accept this proposal for another year. And then after that, we form a group that takes a look at the future, how we can set up a contract and maybe have it so that the person has more than just 1 year.
And it's for the
Typically,
amount that
it's
he's proposing,
renewed.
50,000.
Correct.
Typically, the executive board would put it on
Okay.
the agenda a few months
Just a
before the
second.
renewal. So
Just a
that way
second.
this
We got a
was-
motion on the
I
floor. Is there
want
a
to
second?
second Steve's motion.
Is there a second?
I just wanted to get it on the table, make sure
Okay.
we're doing business correctly. You know, I've been very happy with what Dan does. To me, it's been an unknown exactly what is our status, and I find that, you know, basically, you know, what's in place runs out at the end of the month. You know, that matters. We need to do something. And, you know, seems like this is something we've got a consensus on, so I'm
Okay.
happy to second it.
Okay, so we got a motion and a second on, now is there discussion? James?
We need to tighten up the foreplanning with the executive board. Usually this stuff, we don't wait for the last second. It needs to have been done a month or two prior to this. It should have been on the agenda for January or March, or January, February.
After you go through this motion, James, if it passes, then I'd like to do another motion where we form the group, so we start early and get something set up so that we know what the contract's going to read. So it happens next time, we'll have it 2-3 months before then.
Any other comments?
I guess I would just like to add too that I have very much enjoyed working with Dan, and he's been very helpful to me, especially as a new director. And that's it. Anytime you send an email or call, I think he works all the time. Thank you.
Very good.
I'd like to propose an alternate motion, that we approve the agreement with option years. In other words, that we can optionally, mutually decide to extend it if we want. And I don't know how many option years we would want.
You actually don't have to put a motion, I can accept
Good.
that, keep the same motion, and I don't have a problem with that.
How about the second? No problem?
I'm good.
Okay, so everybody understand the motion now?
How many option years would we want?
I would say 3.
Good.
So the motion is
Dan,
to
does that sound
include
reasonable?
three option years?
Could you, I'm not sure I understand, could you state the motion?
The motion is to approve your contract proposal as noted, with option years that would be negotiated
Correct.
each year for 3 years.
Everybody understand the motion?
I'm fine with that.
All right, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Congratulations, Dan.
You're on the hook for
I'd like to make a motion that we form a committee that takes a look at how we should, construct the contract. Because we've got this coming up, James made a good point, we should be doing this probably 2 months prior to this coming up, and I think we should have the group talk about that and make sure we get it on there.
I'll second again, and we need to start much more than 2 months. Things like this take time to do it
Right.
right, but we,
No, I mean, it has to have it set, so it's done.
Right.
before 2 months. Yes.
anyhow, we need future planning on these matters.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Thank you.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. So should we form the committee now?
Should ask for volunteers.
Volunteers for the committee, I'd say a minimum of 4.
All volunteer?
1,
No more than 4.
so I said,
Yeah.
4 members.
Yeah, no more than 4.
Yes,
Okay, you said at least 4.
same thing. Any volunteers? We got 1. Ron, that's 2. Okay, we got Tom, and now I'll be the 4th one then. Okay? All right,
Who was that for? Myself, two Dan.
Tom and Steve.
No.
Authorize item 16, advertising for RFP for legal services by Mr. Cole.
Okay, this isn't any response to any dissatisfaction, it's just after we learned last meeting that, and then after I asked Dan Malawi about whether we had any contracts on file for Mr. Jasper Services, we're basically on the, on the verbal agreement. So, in terms of just protocol, I thought it would be desirable both from his or another person's perspective and our perspective to have some kind of actual contract so that they know, and we know what we can, kind of anticipate in terms of an on-call legal services going forward. So it was basically just a follow-on to, sort of the improved protocol that we talked about quite a bit for administrative services, just to put that same kind of protocol into place so that we have, a good understanding of a contractual relationship with an attorney, and they have a good understanding of what their, expected, sort of outputs might be from the board and how irregular or regular it might be. So that's just the crux of it.
Yeah. My opinion is that, I said this last time, so I'm not going to repeat myself, but I think we should go through an RFP process for legal services, just as we did for administrative services, which we didn't do hiring Mr. Jasper. My opinion. Yes.
I'm not sure what we would gain from this. Mr. Jasper is here again, as he always is. He's served on our board in the past. He's very familiar with the issues that we discuss, that we deal with. We did have an attorney that was under some sort of contract with us at some point in time in the past. Never saw that person. That person, I'm guessing, never was in touch with what kinds of issues we discussed. As far as I know, that person never showed up at a meeting. So.
And didn't return the calls back.
There's a reason, you know, this wasn't just an arbitrary thing that was done. We picked somebody to represent us on an issue because he's here. He knows the issues. We weren't going to have a lot of spin-up cost on getting this person up to date. If we had like we had before, an attorney on contract, we could end up spending $5,000 just on getting them up to speed on whatever issues it is that we might be dealing with at any given time. Yes, I know you're wrinkling up your face, but
Well,
yeah.
I'll have a comment to maybe respond to that.
Good. So it adds up fast, and the price that Mr. Jasper has been charging us is very reasonable from an hourly perspective. So, and he's always been willing to work with us. So I understand what you're saying, and if we lived in this, you know, perfect world where everybody knew exactly what everybody else does and so forth, sounds like it'd be a great concept, but I don't think that's the reality of the world that we live in. We've got a guy here, he's here every time, he knows what we're dealing with, we get good service, good price from him, and I think we should stick with what we've got.
Well, I guess just to clarify, I'm not necessarily dissatisfied with what Mr. Jaspers either has done or hasn't done for us, but I do think we should make an effort for everyone's benefit to formalize it. You know, I'm not a lawyer, obviously, but when you're dealing with legal aspects, you look at the law and how it applies to a circumstance. So I don't know that it necessarily is as important to be, you know, present at these various meetings to render legal opinions. One of the recent things that gave me a little bit of a pause is when I actually looked up statutes in regards to whether or not, you know, we could get involved with these stream gauging stations, and the quotes that we had from Mr. Jaspers on the floor and from Mr. Bialotta suggested that we were somehow outside the bounds of that, and that DENR was supposed to be doing that under law. The law is very contrary to that. It says they may do that, and there's another section of law that says we can do that because it's part of our business. So it strikes me that we need to be sure we're getting true good legal advice versus biased legal advice that represents someone's opinion aligned with other people's opinion.
I'm going to speak to it here first, is that I don't have any problem with Chuck Jasper, but I have a problem with, we don't know if there's somebody out there that can't do the same work or better work than Mr. Jasper if we don't go through an RFP process. Just like we didn't know who was the best person or group for being an administrator for our group. I think we owe it to the taxpayers to do that rather than just arbitrarily pick somebody that happens to be here. Because we don't really know who else is out there.
I disagree with that characterization. This wasn't an arbitrary thing. I already explained the reasons for it, and there's sound reasons. So this was not.
I disagree with you.
Good.
Anybody else?
No,
Mr. Jasper.
If I can give you some history, perhaps that will help. I can't tell you how many years ago it was. It was probably 4, maybe 5 years ago. I was off the board at the time, and there was a question came up, and I volunteered to write an RFP, and we had that published in the State Bar newsletter, and my recollection is there were 3 people, 2 other than me, that responded. One was a person that claims a high degree of water law knowledge. I can't think of the name right now. and the other person, excuse me, was Ms. Frankenstein. And the board in executive session decided to hire her on a contract. And at some point, I don't know what the contract says, I never read it, so I don't know when it expired, if it expired, but my assumption was it's very similar to South Dakota law, and that's employment at will. Either party can terminate at any time if they so desire. That's an assumption on my part, because like I said, I did not read her contract.
It's my understanding that the board voted, I assume
In executive session, yes, to hire her.
the whole board did?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
I
'Cause
wasn't present at the time.
Okay, it's
Because
my
I was
understanding
out
that
of town.
and I was talking to Dan about it, it went back to the minutes, and it was actually in the minutes, so I didn't see anything about an executive session.
And I don't know.
Okay.
I was told it was executive session. Like I say, I wasn't here, I was out of town at the
Okay.
time.
Steve?
Yeah, I'll reiterate what everybody else said. I don't have a problem. What I have a problem with is not following any protocol. I've never been in an organization that didn't put out an RFP, interview some people, and then pick somebody. And from what I've seen, I've heard what he said, and not discounting it, but what I'm saying is we didn't go through a process. So I would like to make a motion that we direct Dan Mullally to put together an RFP, then we go out for an RFP process. And we may end up with Jasper again, because he may be the only one to put his name out. I don't know who's going to put their name out there.
Is there a second to the motion?
I don't think Dan writes the RFPs. That's usually executive board or.
Just a second, there's no second. Let's get a second before we have discussion. It's okay, second by Ronnie, go ahead.
I don't think Dan writes the RFPs and RFQs. It's usually the executive board or committee that writes up the desired.
What I would suggest is, I'm sure we probably, there's probably an RFP in our minutes or in our backlog.
Rather than go back and forth, then I'll just say I make a motion that we send out an RFP, then the board can talk about how we're going to do that, but my motion is that we do an RFP for position.
Yeah, and it's been seconded.
If I may, as I said, I wrote one before, so it should still be in the record.
Okay, well, we
I
can.
don't know if I kept it in my computer or not,
Okay,
so.
okay, well, thanks, Chuck. Go ahead.
Question for Mr. Jasper. So if we worked up an RFP, let's say you were the only person that responded, would you sign a contract?
I can, I don't feel a need to.
Good.
You know, right now, we have a contract, it's, as you mentioned earlier, an oral contract. I said I would work at this rate and at your request, and that's where it's at.
Did we have a contract with, what was her name, Sarah?
Sarah Frankenstein.
Sarah Frankenstein. Did we have a contract with her?
I'm not,
It was just an RFP that would have been signed.
No, I'm asking if there's something in the records. Maybe you could check that.
I'm not sure. Mr. Jasper, what year was that RFP?
I can look on my computer and see if I kept it, but I'm gonna say it was at least 3 years ago, or possibly 5. It's been several years.
For an RFP. This is not pertinent, we can talk about later. My motion was for us to go out for an RFP.
He's right, we're kind of getting off the subject here. We can check that out. So, is there any other discussions pertinent to the RFP process before we vote on it?
I found it, by the way.
Okay, we'll take that up. So, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign.
nay.
1 nay. Okay, thank you.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. Thank you. Item 17, 2 concepts for consideration by the West Dakota Water Development District, A and B. Which one you want to take first, A?
Well, they're basically gonna go together, so basically the two items I'm looking at, we've had, a couple proposals here and there come along. We had a couple proposals kind of on the drawing board here that didn't end up on the agenda. Rather than addressing proposals in a piecemeal fashion, I'd like to throw out the idea of, soliciting project ideas in the broadest possible fashion from, very broad section of possible participants, basically in basically a listening session of sorts. The second half of it is, I think one of the real questions we need to ask is who are the other stakeholders out there? Who can bring additional funding? How can we leverage additional funding? Who is it that cares about these things? We don't manage anything but a small, tax revenue stream that comes through our office that happens to be associated with water. But all the other stakeholders out there, John with Game and Fish, Forest Service, Bureau of Reclamation, these are the real people, DENR, the city, these are the real entities that are managing the water. I think it would make sense to have them included in a listening session like this, and then talk about, formation of a coordination group. How could we coordinate on water-related projects, activities? How can we make sure that things that different entities are doing don't overlap, that we avoid duplication of effort? To what extent can we be complementing each other? So, the concept that I've kind of come up with is, if we could invite, basically at one of our meetings, basically hold a meeting with the intent of addressing, these two items as primary items. The first to be a listening support, let people come in, here's just a one-page piece of paper, here's an idea, and you've got 5 minutes to present it. Just throw it out there. It's easy enough to put them in a folder, and then we can assimilate them and go from there. We can, spend an hour and a half, kind of depends on how many ideas come along. The second half of the session, we invite all the stakeholders to the same session, and they get to listen to these ideas, and then we spend an hour or whatever talking about would it make sense to have a coordination group to where we could get together, say, once a quarter or something like that, and trade some ideas, coordinate, who's got common needs. So, my sense was that a good way to do this, if we would look at something like this for an April meeting, to me, one logical approach to doing it, we could, basically easily send out an email to invite participants in such a meeting. The upcoming hydrology conference, we're gonna, have a few minutes to speak at lunchtime, tell them about West Dakota and what we're doing. It makes sense to me to hold a meeting basically the week after that, which would give us a chance to tell people about it. They could visit with us in person. So my motion is going to be that we would hold our April meeting to accommodate those two particular items, and I'm going to just throw out as a suggestion the week of April 15, and basically with hopes that we might, if this sounds like a good idea, we could come together on consensus on how to go about it. I looked at some dates out at the outdoor campus to see what's available, and basically 3 ranges of dates. That week, the week after the hydrology conference, there's several dates that can work. I'd originally thought 2 weeks later might be a better time, give us a little more time to react. That particular week is entirely sewed up at the outdoor campus. Basically, they've got hunter safety training for the Tuesday through Friday, and Monday happens to be a day state employees have been given the Monday off following Easter. One more option would be, the week prior to that, the week of April 8, our regularly scheduled meeting would be April 9, so it certainly could be done, say, at a regular April 9 meeting. So again, the brief motion would be to try to schedule a meeting like this, a session like this for our April meeting, and to kind of work in on details if we'd have a consensus from the group that this is something we ought to try to do. And so if anybody wants to provide a second, we can kind of discuss the general end of things, and then work towards the details.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second to the motion?
Second for discussional purposes.
Okay, second by Steve. Discussion. Nathan?
Yeah. I'm not opposed to the coordination part of what Director Driscoll was talking about. I think that's clearly within the mission of what this board is supposed to be about, but philosophically, I guess I have a big problem with soliciting projects. I don't think that's our job. I don't think it's our job to go out and find ways to spend taxpayer dollars. Federal government does that all the time. I've been in meetings. I remember meetings with Corps of Engineers where they came into a community and they had taxpayer dollars that they had to spend, and they were trying desperately to convince communities that they needed this project for whatever reason, so that they could spend those dollars down and get them back during the next budget cycle. It's wasteful. It's spending money for the sake of spending money. I don't like it. I think philosophically it's wrong.
And I'd like to respond, like
Just a
basically,
second. Just a second, Dan. Did you have, who's next? You? James?
I don't mind the coordination either. The problem I have is setting up any kind of special interest group. The name in itself, you're asking a political organization, we're state elected officials on paper, that's what we are, setting up a special interest group to ask us for money. And I have never heard any portion of government setting up a nonprofit or quasi-nonprofit to come put its hand in the cookie jar. It would just reek of impropriety every which way but loose.
Okay. Dan?
so my response, this isn't out seeking to spend money. We have a budget allocation every year that's going to get spent in some fashion. Some amount of that goes to administrative services, director fees, etc., and the rest goes to whatever it lands on. To me, it makes all the sense in the world. Like, personally, I cannot imagine any impropriety. To me, it makes all the sense in the world to ask, what are the ideas that are out there? How may they fit together? And who might be the additional stakeholders who could either contribute funds, collaborate with other resources, or at least, identify whether or not there's relevance and benefits to them. So that's my opinion.
Nathan?
Again, I don't have any issue with coordination. I think that's what Director Driscoll was just alluding to. I don't think we should be out soliciting projects, and I don't see any problem with saving money for well-deserving projects. For example, trying to get water from the Missouri River out to western South Dakota. Great project. It would take a lot of money to do that. And if we end up frivolously spending our money on interesting things that don't really get us anywhere, between now and whenever that project could potentially happen, then that project may not happen.
Steve?
As was earlier said, that, we were elected to this board, and our mission statement clearly says what our duties are. So us going out finding projects that fit our mission is exactly what the taxpayers hired us for.
I disagree.
I'm not arguing with you. I got the floor, please. So if I read the mission statement here, it states that in our mission. And so I agree with you in that we shouldn't be going out just spending money, where we want to. But if somebody has an idea or a project, we should be out there bringing these projects before this group. This group makes a decision on spending that money. So I don't have any problem going out seeking people to come before us to say, hey, and then we look at it, how does that fit our mission? And does it fit our mission? If it doesn't fit our mission, then we shouldn't be spending the money. But we do need to go out there because our mission is to make sure that we continue to have quality water for generations to come.
I have one comment too before Nathan. I don't know if the word solicitation necessarily describes what we've been doing since I've been on here, but most of the projects that have come forward here have been through the participation of a director. The director's been leading them, and I don't see anything wrong with that at all. But I don't think we're getting the message out to our stakeholders and our potential partners and projects in here that, you know, what we do, they don't even know what we're doing. And I think that's one of the reasons we haven't had a lot of projects come through here in 2 years. Let Ronnie go ahead.
I guess I support the idea of trying to cast a wider net and to have a larger conversation than what we're able to get at a board meeting once a month, and actually, focus some effort on getting people together, like, for example, Game and Fish and maybe a School of Mines person or the City of Rapid City. Make a focused effort there to talk about the things that are of concern, to those particular entities that could be under the umbrella of, the areas that we'd be interested in. And maybe we don't solicit per se for a project idea, but by facilitating that conversation among those people who are in the water business, the water conservation business, they may, of their own volition, decide that it's in their best interest to combine their respective talents and resources and expertise, and then come to the board who's, potentially able to receive those requests under their mission and go forward. So to me, I think it's a really good idea to have a wider conversation with the focused effort of getting people together and talking amongst themselves and have this board be the nexus for that.
Okay.
I think everybody misunderstands. You're supposed to be having these conversations all year with all these different entities. They come to you, they get your email, they go, hey, we have this great idea for a project. Does this fit within your scope? We say yes, no, let's look at it. And then that director brings that project to the board and they present. That's how this has always been done, and I'm not saying that's bad or good. What I'm saying is creating a quasi-group or board before it gets to us is where you cross the line, because now, let's say that quasi-group has Game Fish and Park, School of Mines, and DNR. But guess what? Now USGS is really mad, and they file a grievance because we excluded their group. Let's say we excluded Black Hills Fishermen. Now they file a grievance. If you even miss one, perceived or not perceived, by creating a quasi-group, you're going to open the door for a kick in the teeth from every party on the bench. Because not only do we feed water projects for science and research and safety and health, but you know why we haven't done a septic system in a while? Because nobody wants to talk about it. But our board actually funds residential septic systems, repairs and replacements for people. It's actually in our mission. And nobody wants to tell those people under hardship that our board is here. We tried to do it once or twice and everybody said no. Nobody wants to talk about it. So if we're going to, make this quasi-board up, are we going to bring in all the taxpayers and say, hey, do you know if you have a septic problem, a wastewater, or a water problem, that you can apply for money from this board? Because if you're going to leave them out, I assure you, somebody's going to take advantage.
Just, I don't think that, and maybe I'm misunderstanding what Mr. Driscoll said, but this would be more of a listening session where there's an interchange of ideas. For example, if someone comes to me with a project proposal, I can only respond to that project proposal to some degree from my area of understanding. And so if there's a wider discussion and a wider involvement by more heads, you know, as someone wants to vet their project proposal idea, to me it's a way to make that project proposal and to make it better and to get, you know, more people who have some interest in that involved. And if it's a voluntary, you know, listening session where we facilitate it, I guess I don't see the same pitfalls of that you've identified in terms of getting crosswise with somebody.
Well, the second he suggested a meeting date and time by this board, now it's an official action of the board. And if we leave out a group, we've officially alienated or officially backed a certain group.
Could I have a couple more comments, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, go ahead.
Here's some more ammunition. Hand that out to the audience, and these can go down the line to the directors. One thing, if we hold this as one of our meetings, it's open to the public. Anybody on the planet is welcome to attend. We won't be excluding anybody. You know, I've taken the time to put some things together. There's, you know, wording for an email that we could use, some available time slots. I'm turning to the second page, or the second full page. It's a very short page. It's basically a form to submit a project idea. Here's where you could just submit your idea. Okay, go to the back of that page. There's a project idea that I would intend to submit. So to give you an idea, I would like to be able to prioritize between projects like this that I would submit to a meeting and all the other ones that might come in. Just here's some ideas. Then we could begin to prioritize what are the best fits, what work with other stakeholders. So about 2 minutes on what I would propose. Tim Bjork, he's still in the audience here. He might be able to help us a little bit. But to go to the SWARMS, the State Water Resources Management System, with a proposal to basically seek funds for additional water quality work along Rapid Creek. You know, we had a couple of proposals in here at our last meeting that didn't make the cut. You know, we had a little bit of support from Rapid City. That wasn't enough to get them there. I don't know how many people are familiar with SWARMS. That's the mechanism where DENR can basically provide, you know, funding that's appropriated by the legislature for things like this. So if you could bring in stakeholders such as Game and Fish, West Dakota with their dollars, City of Rapid City, School of Mines, and then you seek funding from DENR. That's the only way I know of to really bring DENR funds to the table. So I think this is the way we need to try to do business, is try to leverage additional funds from other agencies to go with that very small pool of funds that we need to use judiciously.
Steve?
You know, I'm looking at this and I have no objection to what he's saying as far as forming, and you have people come from all over. I kind of agree with James when it comes to B, forming a Black Hills Area Interest Group Coalition. We are the Water Board. We don't need to be forming some other organization over here that comes to us. I see a serious conflict with that. But with us having an open forum, we used to do it all the time on boards I was on, and City Council does it for the 2020 projects. Anybody can come in there and have ideas, just like the idea he just presented. We might only get 10 ideas. We listen to them. Nobody's left out. And then if there's nothing there that we think fits our mission, then we don't accept any of them. But I do agree with you on forming it.
And there's one benefit for all you federal employees that are used to lose or use money. This board's money is not use or lose. If we have $150,000 on December 31st, we have $150,000 on January 1st. So if there's a large project, like there's a couple of large project ideas right now that are in the pipes, it isn't that that money is just sitting in the bank account doing nothing. There are some pending projects. There's some projects coming down the pipe. The DNA study is still on the table. That would eat up a large portion of funds. And all of these groups that are on here, have come to this board. It isn't like we'd be telling them something they didn't know. They know anytime that it fits inside their mission. Every one of these groups on here I've seen present. Everyone.
I
And
don't
I've only
think
sat
there's
on
any
boards
fear
here.
from anyone of losing these funds. We all know how they operate. To me, the much bigger picture is how do we leverage additional funds from additional entities so that we can pool our dollars, do more working together and avoid duplication from people working on similar things and not even being aware that each other are working on it. I think that's the real benefit we look at.
I'd like to build a point of order though, Dan, as we continue. We seem to be getting into arguments and stuff, and Dan, nobody should be speaking unless you've given them the floor. If they want a second question, they have to ask, can I follow up? The constant arguing, you need to stop it. If James got the floor, he has the floor. You can't respond. You've got to wait for you to give somebody the floor.
Good point. Well taken. So, we have a motion on the floor, right?
Yeah, that was, could you state your motion?
But we would look at, holding our April meeting to facilitate two primary agenda items, one being a listening session for, project ideas, and one to be to facilitate a round table discussion of stakeholders, with who may have interests in, project sharing and, coordination.
So our regular meeting, okay.
I would start out calling it a regular meeting. That's, and I actually suggest something besides our, I would, if the idea would fly, I would prefer to do it. I might suggest an afternoon to be, more, better suited to, the agencies that might be involved. But whatever would work best for the group would be the way to go. To me, that's one of the details to be worked out.
Yes, meeting schedules.
First and foremost, the idea, and then worrying about the details.
Okay, Steve's got a question.
Well, it's not a
Comment.
question. I'm looking at the time. It's 8 o'clock, so I don't see
No, it's
this.
9.
Or 9 o'clock. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong clock. So I'm looking at it's 9 o'clock already. I can't see this happening at a regular meeting. I don't mind if we, and I think we're rushing it really quick. I think we should talk about the idea and talk about how we're going to do it. So I guess I would make a motion that we postpone it till next meeting so everybody has a chance to come up with some ideas, and as a group we'll have a discussion, decide, okay, can we do this in June or July or something, rather than suddenly just doing the meeting next April. At our meeting, we could be here till midnight.
So that's a substitute motion, then.
Correct.
That's a substitute motion to Dan's motion. Is there a second to the substitute motion?
I'll second it.
Tom seconds it. Any discussion on the substitute motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the substitute motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thanks for the discussion on that. Okay, we're moving along to chair's comments. I only have one thing. I did get an email from Denise Livingston, who we talked about earlier. She was the administrator for this group for a while. She, and I did forward this to Dan Mullally, her suggestion to the board was to recognize Dr. Elvis Lisenby for his long-term dedication to this board and for promoting water quality, water conservation, that sort of thing in our district. And there was an award that was started. It's called the Gail Holbrook Award, and I believe it was in 2013, if I remember her email, that was given out at the hydrology conference at that particular time. And she's just suggesting that we might consider doing that for Dr. Elvis Lisenby. So I'm just passing that along to the board. If anybody's interested in us doing that, I think it would be a good thing for those of us who know him, who knew him. Comments?
Can you clarify exactly what she was looking for? She looking for a donation for something?
Well, I suppose to get an award, something to hand out to, I would assume somebody from his family at this, and we wouldn't necessarily have to do it at the hydrology conference, but when they recognized Gail Holbrook, apparently it was done at the hydrology conference.
So you're thinking a plaque?
Yeah, like a plaque or something like that, yes. Yes, Steve.
So, from my understanding, from what you just said, we have a Gail Holbrook award that this group gives out. Is that correct, Dan?
Yeah, shall I read the email?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, this is from Denise Livingston. Well, no, actually, this is from the minutes of the meeting, but Director Rogers moved to recognize Gail Holbrook. This is March 20th, 2013. Rogers moved to recognize Gail Holbrook for his years of service on the West Dakota Board and create a Gail Holbrook Award to be given out as appropriate in recognition of service to protecting our water resources. And then a motion passed. So the board created this award. But I don't know anything as far as how it's been used.
It was my understanding it was handed out at the hydrology conference, just, for Gail Holbrook, is what I understood.
Okay.
But that was just a suggestion, not that we considered it.
So who decided who to give it to? Who decides that?
The board,
We do?
yes.
Okay. I don't recall being involved in that.
No, that's why I'm bringing it up.
No, the Gail Holbrook Award.
That's just what it was called.
2013.
This was 2013.
Okay, so it was a one-time thing?
No, apparently the board created this award with nothing other than we have this award we can give out.
You know something about that, Dan?
I move to bestow the Gail Holbrook Award to Elvis Linsby.
Okay.
It's not on
Long
the
service
agenda.
to the
We
West
can't
Dakota
act
water
on it.
community.
It's not on the agenda.
Now, what does the board want to do? Nothing?
It should have been put on the agenda then.
Well, I didn't find out about it until,
Well, you could have altered the agenda when we started the meeting. It wasn't put on the agenda, hence it can't be voted on.
is that right?
Generally, yeah.
Well,
I don't know about something like this, though, for sure.
yeah,
It's gonna be money, then yeah.
It doesn't
plaque
involve
that is involved.
spending money, maybe you can do it. I would guess it's probably okay to do something like this. You're just recognizing somebody for their accomplishments.
yes.
How about if we've got sponsorship of the luncheon,
Yes, we do.
right?
Yep.
So how about if whoever it is that does the greeting at the luncheon mention Dr. Lisenby and the positive impact that he's had on the board and projects that he's done for us.
I think that'd be appropriate.
Good.
Can we just do that? Okay.
Well, and I'll add that Dr. Foster Sawyer, in the email, said that he would be willing to write something up because he worked with and knew Dr. Lisenby well. So whoever talks at the hydrology conference, could use those notes.
That's a good idea. Okay, we'll just move forward then. Well, let's see, items from directors. A has been taken care of. B, Director Harris.
Okay. Dr. Lisa Kunza from the South Dakota School of Mines, who is in the audience, had brought a proposal to the board at the last meeting, just requesting that we consider funding the Graduate Women in Science National Conference, which will be held in Rapid City in June of this year. And the conference, she said, does not exclude men, but it's So if they want to come, they certainly can, and they have different levels of sponsorship opportunities. And my mistake, I thought that if we brought it up now and maybe voted at our next meeting, that would work, but Lisa pointed out that they are already printing up programs, or will be soon, and putting it on their website. I don't know if this counts as being on the agenda, if we can consider voting for any level of funding or not.
We've done it before.
Yeah, and if anybody had any specific questions, Lisa is here and is willing to answer those, but, you know,
Is there a
this
motion?
conference is for, you know, women will be here nationwide, but it would also be supporting our current students and graduate students that are at School of Mines and, you know, our future researchers.
Steve?
You know, I don't have a problem with this, but I do have a problem with funding. It doesn't seem to fit our mission statement anywhere, and I don't want, James has said earlier today, that we just start, this is a money tree, let's go to the water board, they'll give us money for every little thing. I don't see where this is fitting our mission statement, so I can't support it.
There's no motion on the floor.
I'm just telling you, I won't support it. There's
Okay.
one on the floor.
I don't know, I see it's on the agenda, why wasn't it placed as an agenda item? I mean, it seems small, but when you ask the public why you gave out money, that's something that wasn't on the official agenda, and they go to the bylaws and go, well, you can't do that, then we look stupid.
At our executive board meeting, they thought maybe it would be better to just introduce the topic, but like I said, my mistake, time was important. You know, if we want to be acknowledged, if we donate any money.
Yeah, both those items we talked about, on the Green New Deal, there wasn't any information, so we just moved, and then the item that Linda's brought up, we just moved them down to the items from the director.
Usually the executive board doesn't vote down
We weren't voting.
We weren't voting.
or say, if the director says it's supposed to be on the agenda, it's usually just put on the agenda.
have
Unless
to have
the agenda's full and they ask them to postpone it to the next agenda.
Well, if there's.
I'm still learning.
Yeah, and there wasn't, Linda did have the information, Nathan didn't have any handout documents, so we didn't know what it was, so that's why we moved it down there, so. I guess if you're gonna put an item on there, you need to be more specific that you want it on the agenda, right, rather than under the items from directors, and provide information as to what it is. Go ahead.
That's exactly what I was gonna say, if you're gonna put something on here, it has to be an item, it just can't say a word.
Right.
I look at it and thought,
We didn't know
I
what, we had
clue
no idea what it was.
So that goes under directors. Now, if you're gonna put a project, or you're gonna put something on, you give us information, I can do that.
Right.
That's why we moved it down there, it wasn't like,
Well, even sometimes as a director, we will put something on the agenda that somebody is presenting on, and that information is brought to the meeting.
Yeah. And, you know, there was information about the conference in your packet.
yeah. Is there a motion?
Anderson.
Well, I have to ask the question, I see it on my agenda, why is it that it's not considered to be on the agenda?
Because it's not an official agenda item.
Because
Because it should have been listed
It's
before
on the-
item
18A
18.
instead of a...
It's on the agenda. The item is on the agenda. Both of those items.
Right,
are on the
the
agenda.
That's the official ruling, I don't understand that if that's the ruling.
That's what we,
You gotta read Robert.
like I say, we're kind of learning. I mean, we've been at a couple meetings, so we just decided as executive meeting, since we did have information on that, with that, we removed those two items down to items from directors. Is there a motion?
I have a comment.
Okay.
Well, and then, we don't have any real good procedural rules in our book on how to bring agenda items. It should be specified somewhere and dropped. If you're not gonna use Robert's Rules of Order, we need to have some sort of spot that, in our pamphlet that we hand out to all the new directors that shows you the exact process, and I don't think we have a process.
It's in our bylaws to follow Robert's rules.
Well, I know that, but it doesn't explain an issue like this.
Robert's rules does not explain.
Yeah, it's
No, it
in there
doesn't.
for agenda items and whatnot.
Okay.
Well, there's no motion on the floor, so I'd say we move on.
I got a question, I got something.
Yes.
Normally, when you have an agenda, your items that you're voting on are there, and then when the chair says item number 8, somebody says, I move for approval, second, then discussion. We have a habit of having conversations with nothing out there. That comes later. That's not on the agenda. Conversations aren't on the agenda. They're after the items you vote on. Then those are conversations. You can't vote on those, and I think we need to get organized so that, just like Greendale, there was nothing that, nobody came out and said, I move for approval. There should be no discussion. It should have been approved, and then we start the discussion. So going forward, I think we need to get that organized so that everybody on the board understands that when we get to it.
Good point. Yes.
So a couple of things. First off, in response to my agenda item being moved unilaterally down to items from directors, I've got my cell phone with me all the time and email. Could have been any conversation, just asking me, where would you like this? That wasn't done. So I don't appreciate the characterization that you were able to unilaterally do that because you didn't have what you needed. You could have asked me. That wasn't done.
Are you talking to me directly?
I'm talking to whoever it was that decided to put that down
Well,
where it did.
there's 4 of us on the executive committee and Dan
The other-
Lawley.
The board doesn't do that.
The other issue is there was a reason why I moved it to the agenda. We had that discussion at the beginning of our meeting tonight so
That was
we
fine.
could vote on it.
That was fine.
That's right. So
The
that
motion should have been up front, though, I think.
that should have been a message to whoever else had items from directors, if they wanted it voted on, to also move their item to the agenda. So the other thing that I would like to ask in regard to this, I'd like to ask Dr. Kunze, how would you feel if I was proposing sponsorship of a graduate men in Science National Conference? We need to quit splintering ourselves, and we need to start treating each other as equals. I'm so tired of seeing all of this trying to break people up into groups, and I don't know why we're having a Graduate Women in Science National Conference. I get tired of that. I've been victimized by this for 40 years, and I'm tired of seeing stuff like that. We need to be equals. And we should have conferences that are gender neutral, race neutral, etc. So I would never support something like this just because of the way it's set up. It's automatically discriminatory against men, and I don't know why people do that. I get frustrated by it. And if you'd walk the path that I've walked, you'd feel the same way.
Well,
Dan?
yes.
I can understand where you're coming from, but on the other hand, they're having a Graduate Women in Science Conference because the women got together and said, let's do this. Let's support each other. And so they're doing it. And if the men wanted to have their own conference, they could do that as well.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to respond to that.
Go ahead. I think we're...
If men tried to do that, it would be viewed as gender discrimination. There are two very different standards.
I
so it
totally
would not
disagree
fly.
with what you're saying.
No, it definitely would.
Dr. Kunze.
Very briefly.
Okay.
So the conference is really about communicating science and connecting, leading, and empowering. And one of the things that you mentioned was that we're discriminating. We are not men allies in this, and we are not in any way excluding male participation. As a matter of fact, we're seeking male graduate students and male faculty and anybody that wants to participate as part of this. And one of the reasons why I was asking for sponsorship or wanting the board to consider sponsorship was not because there's a money tree to be asking for money from, but rather to show that this board supports communicating science. Because that's the theme of the conference. So it just happens to be that it's a national graduate women in science group, which men are welcome to participate in if they want to. We have one male member in our chapter. If you want to join, you're welcome to join. So I just wanted to throw that.
Okay. Go ahead.
Just to clarify, my issue is not with you personally. Okay, I have no issue with you personally at all. My issue is with this. If you don't have any reluctance to inviting men to go to this, then maybe don't call it Graduate Women in Science National Conference. Just have a national conference and have it open to everybody like it should be. That's the way these things should go down. This country is built on this promise of equality, and I haven't seen it in 40 years. I'm sorry and if I seem jaded, but I am, because of what I've experienced. Okay? As a white male in this society, it's been incredibly difficult for 40 years. My entire adult life has been spent in the shadow of having to be overlooked because somebody else is more deserving because of their gender or their skin color or whatever. And I get tired of it. I get tired of seeing it. And our society should not tolerate things like that. We shouldn't be doing this.
Nathan, can we just move on? There's no motion.
That's
on
fine.
It's getting late. And
Yep, I agree.
I think we understand what you're saying. So,
Thank you.
we're still on items from directors. Anybody have anything? James?
I have a couple things. One, I would really ask our executive board to buckle down. I know this is new, you got thrown into the pot. This is now our third meeting, second one here. 3 months, I would hope you guys would, in executive board, found some permanent digs for us.
Some what?
Permanent digs, permanent location for our meeting place. And I did have a question. The State Water Board and Pier, as a board, we did vote on who was allowed to attend for reimbursement, correct?
For which?
The State Water Board and Pier, the water conference and the State Water Board?
In January, you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
The Rural Water Conference?
Yeah, the Rural Water Conference. We did vote on who was allowed to attend for reimbursement, correct?
I don't remember. There was 3 of us, 4 of us that went.
I think we voted prior to that for reimbursement.
I'm confused, a legislative session?
Was it the legislative?
It wasn't the water board. We
Was it
didn't
the
go.
legislative session?
Yeah.
In the State Water Board had their meeting at the same time.
We
They
went,
they didn't.
The
no.
rural water did.
We
It's
went
the
down,
Association of
you're talking about the
Rural
one
Water
where the two, we went to
Yeah.
the
Right,
two meetings.
in the
and-
legislative session, and they had the water board meeting at
And
the
then
same.
we went to, we went to the 2 other district meetings, and then we went to
Right.
the rural water thing afterwards.
We did vote prior to that pre-approval for expenses, correct?
Yes.
Who was on the list for pre-approval?
Well, the 4 of us that went, Bjorky, Mac, me, Steve.
I think our only expenses was
Travel.
we traveled, we
Right.
we took well, Dan drove down too, but we took one vehicle, so we carpooled down there, and then, was that all we got reimbursed for?
There were some trivial things like $6 for breakfast or something, but yeah, it was,
What-
I had a. I
Can
did
you
have
see
a
what the
hotel.
minutes actually say for who is on the list prior to the meeting going?
Want me to look right now?
Please.
Okay, it's gonna take a minute here.
Because I thought we had approved 2 plus Dan for
I
reimbursement
told
expenses.
everybody at the meeting that I was going.
I'm
and
pretty sure I had it.
I ended up driving because, I offered to drive.
Because
So,
it came up at 2 meetings, actually.
Well, while he's looking at it, I'd like to say
Go
something.
ahead, Steve.
I just want to thank you two for coming and making the presentation and sitting here all this time listening to this. It's had to been really exciting. I'm
I
sure.
learned something.
And as far as getting digs, that's not the job of the executive board. That's the job of everybody sitting on here. So if you want to find a place, you're welcome to help us. But it's not our job to find it. It's the
agree.
board's job.
I think it's not the job of
I'm
the
not going to take
executive.
that dig,
one of
but everybody
No.
here
jobs
is,
to
No, it's
everybody
not.
here is responsible for that. So if you got something, bring it to us and let us know. We'll be glad to look at it.
Everybody's brought you 5 ideas. Nobody's said, oh, we decided this.
Look at it.
We went around looking for places.
All right. That's what I had my say.
Well, I think the board, just,
Can you get that information and give it to James
yeah,
Galata?
so we can
It
move
was
on.
at the January meeting, I can tell you that.
It's item 19, Rollinger, Beerkey, Mac, admin Mullally. Motion made by Joe Big, seconded by William. Carried unanimous on a voice vote.
Yeah, so, and actually, like I say, the only expense we had was mileage to drive down there and back. We took one vehicle, and the lunch was provided by the other 2 water development districts. The social over there at the Dakota Water, which was very informative. They had food and drinks and whatever you wanted over there at no cost to us. So it was very minimal cost to send us members down there for that meeting, and it was very important. It's too bad we all couldn't go. Anything else? Any other?
Move to adjourn.
No,
Oh, wait.
Oh, no?
Second, no.
Well, I thought we already did his admin.
Dan's got something.
Director Driscoll,
Also, wait. Go ahead.
One thing we need to do, I'm fully aware of the need to have the chair recognizing people. We need to have an arrangement where either the chair is visible to all the people in the room,
I agree.
or we need to have little lights that come on like they do up there at City Hall, or sometimes if you want to be heard, if you're far enough down the line, you just gotta, kind of join in the ruckus. Items like Linda's item for Ms. Coons, those items should go to the front of our agenda. We shouldn't ask our guests to sit here for 3 or 4 hours waiting for little things like this. It's unfortunate that we seem to be tangled up with some sort of agenda versus non-agenda item there. I'll be mystified forever how that's not really on the agenda. It's, to me, very unfortunate that this is something that our water community should be supporting as our future scientists. I'm very embarrassed that we're unable to support that. That's all.
Okay. Item 20, items from Mr. Malala.
okay, I went to the Pennington Conservation District meeting, their monthly meeting, and Director Driscoll was there with me. Nothing really that interesting unless you want to know the emerald ash borer was hurt by cold weather. They talked about some grant opportunities they were working on, RC&D. They're having a district speech contest for high school kids March 13th at 3 p.m. That's at that whatever that facility's called that they meet at, I forgot.
Probably out at the NRCS Service Center.
Anyway, then the upcoming meetings, you know about the hydrology conference, April 11th, and for a poster, Joanne, how do you say the name, Joyce? Okay. Was really nice, and the poster we have now, I should have brought it in, it's in my office, it's real generic looking, and I think it probably came from East Dakota Water Development District. It doesn't really have our logo or other, all it says is West Dakota Water Development. It has some pictures that really don't have much to do with us. Anyway, Joanne made up her idea, or maybe you had other input, of a poster, and correct me if I'm wrong, you could do a printout for $10, which is nothing, and we can get a foam board for $6, and I have spray adhesive, he said you have it too. Anyway, what we're looking at is maybe having something better for this hydrology conference. Copy country would be almost $50. So anyway, your poster, in my opinion, was a good start, but there were some things that probably need to be looked at. So I don't know if we want to get a group of people together, or if you want me and Joanne just to take a shot at it. It's not very expensive, so even if we decide it's not the best, we could redo it later, but I'm just thinking for April 11th if we could have something better. I don't know if we want to talk about that now, or...
Well, I think it's, personally, I think it'd be nice to have something there that's presentable and tells the story of what we do.
Okay, I'll just take that as an action to work with Joanne and try to come up with something. Anyway, there's a meeting, off that topic, there's a meeting at Ellsworth for those of you that are interested in the PFOS fire retardant contamination, the Teflon. That's March 19th, 6 p.m. at the Air Space Museum, I believe. Is that correct, Mr. Getty?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So, the tax levy we talked about. I need to order checks. They're $205 for 200. So I'll get with Director Rollinger. I think we should probably do that. And that's about it. Thank you for renewing my contract. As usual,
Welcome.
come with me with suggestions. I'll do my best.
Okay, thanks, Dan, for your updates. Is there any items from the public? I know it's getting late. Ernie?
My name is Ernie Getty. I have a few comments. I have 3 comments. Can I address all 3 of them at once, or you want me to do one at a time? And then
You got the floor.
At the top of my list is kudos to your administrator, Dan Malawi, when I was the director and now as a private taxpaying citizen. As Director Rollinger and Director Harris mentioned, he's at our beck and call at any hour of the day or week. And I think he's just a terrific administrator, too.
I'm not saying that because you're his neighbor, are you?
Well, we have to mitigate a dandelion situation. So I gotta be,
Those dang bees flying around.
just as a sidebar on that, I'm just throwing that out there. You mentioned that his existing contract is a seven-month agreement.
7 meeting.
Yeah, and now it's a 12-month meeting thing. Is that, I don't know if that would be appropriate to maybe compensate him for the extra time that's going to be spent on that. That's just...
He included in that raise.
Just saying.
That's what he told me.
That way he can afford weed killer, just saying. Thank you for bringing up that PFOS thing on the 16th. I'd forgotten the date, and I know there's no one here tonight to address that, but I look forward to attending that. And
It's the 16th or 19th?
Pardon?
You said 16th?
It's a week from
19th?
tonight.
19th.
19th at 6 p.m.
Okay.
Yes.
As a sidebar to that too, in the paper here, in the past week, I noticed that Ellsworth is going to come into a substantial amount of money for land acquisition. They're going to get a new bar here pretty soon, and they're looking to expand the footprint of the base. And I'm anxious to attend that meeting and see if there might be an opportunity for them to purchase some of that land to the west of the base with some of this contamination issue is here. I know they're not in the business of saving homeowners from a horrendous revenue, real estate loss, but that might be an opportunity to bail out some of those landowners, just saying. And I'll ask those questions at that meeting. Another item brought up by Director Driscoll, as far as soliciting for revenue expenditures. When I served on the board in general was very frugal with the monies entrusted to them by the taxpayers, and I think you have a great idea there, and I think Director Bialotta had a good rebuttal. And I think one way to maybe mitigate that, yes, you are here to help with worthy water projects, and my suggestion would be to perhaps advertise more, not actively invite people to present expenditures, as it were, but to advertise in the paper that this meeting is here, this is what we do, and please come to the meeting under a form that we already have here that exists for people that are looking for help. So I would advocate for more advertising as opposed to setting up extra meetings, as it were, to find ways to spend revenue.
Maybe we could talk about that in our next budget process. The possibility.
Yeah, that's all I
The
have.
possibility. Okay, thanks for coming. Well, that's the end of the meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn, second?
Yes.
Yes. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Meeting adjourned. Thanks to everybody for coming. It's been kind of a long meeting, but we got a lot of time.
A lot of seconds.
Yeah, I mean, it's
I think.
I guess when I was here,
I don't remember being that young.
Oh, long night.